Solar plexus clown glider is the collective name given to many paranormal phenomena that result from the corruption that infects the weak and vulnerable through the solar plexus chakra, originally used by New Age therapists in the 80s. The phenomena was linked to a horror email sent back in the 90s that claimed that simply reading or hearing the words solar plexus clown glider made one susceptible to infection. Others claim to have been affected by looking at gruesome black and white images circulating online. Instead of material, these gliders are ephemeral and operate at the level of language. It is known through images and words. The solar plexus clown glider seems to feed on human misery, bombarding its human hosts with realistic hallucinations, blunders in reality, and emotionally draining them. They then simply control the hosts beyond their capacity for psychological pain. The sickness associated with gliders contact is described as similar to the withdrawal paranormal symptoms of methamphetamine addicts, even with near constant full body hallucinations and true psychosis. The reported effects are also similar to delusional states. According to Hindu culture, the solar plexus has both positive and lower negative emotion. This chakra, one of the 7 main chakras, is the center of determination and will, as well as anger, irritation, hate, envy, greed, destruction, violence, cruelty, resentment, anxiety, fear, selfishness, and aggression. The idea of demonic forces literally fueling these negative emotions is spread around the world in various contexts outside of chakra cleansing, and it was in this context that the phrase was first used in New Age circles in the 80s. No trace of the phrase can be found before the male art movement of the 90s. It is speculated the phrase developed in a CIA mind control experiment, as those who repeated it often reported feeling an invisible presence or overwhelming cold. Similar experiments were conducted as part of the MK Ultra studies. Famous apparent victims include Dead Rabbit Radio podcast host Jason Carpenter, who saw a giant cobra rise up and slither down the aisles of a courtroom. After this already disturbing experience, Carpenter described his mood and quality of life as severely impaired. Only later, after researching the gliders, did he guess that the experience was related. He sees the gliders as an internet culture parasite that exists to spread human suffering. Best known by its image and name, the gliders sometimes appeared as a physically demonic prankster, but its form is ultimately fluid, capable of penetrating and shape-shifting into any visible surface if it has enough power over its victim. This body is said to more often resemble the oozing forms of slugs and snakes. It can often appear to be made of matter outside of normal three-dimensional laws. However, assigning a specific form to this entity is futile, as it ultimately reducible not to its hallucinatory content, but to the rumored visual effects of a phase engineered to trigger mental deterioration. Alternatively, there is also a supposed set of black and white images, only one of which is currently in circulation, that achieves the same effect of madness. Other tellings implicate a special frequency associated with the gliders. It has been suggested that it is an example of an early internet legend, that it was spread by computer viruses to further convince people in the 1990s that their computer was haunted. To that extent, solar plexus clown glider myths emerged at a critical stage with early internet urban legends. Manifestation is when individuals or groups prevent folklore scenarios and reenact a tradition. An example of a fictional myth known for generations is Bloody Mary. Now to go over notable alleged accounts with this being some people think exists, starting with Jason Carpenter.
So when I was in college, I had an assignment. I had to sit in a courthouse. I think it wasn't criminal justice. It might have been journalism class. I had to sit in a courthouse and watch a trial and take notes. And I'm sitting in the back because I'm too cool to sit in the front. I'm sitting in the very back, and they have those orange hard plastic chairs because who wants to be comfortable while watching your loved one be tried for murder? I'm sitting in one of those orange plastic chairs, and I remember just kind of had my arm up. It was, I don't know, just a weekday morning. Had my arm up on the chair. I'm just kind of leaning back like Jason does because I can't sit like a human. Again, too cool. So I saw something out of the corner of my eye, my right eye. And I'm alone in the back row. It's just me, and I'm sitting right at the aisle because I always like to be on the aisle in case I got to go to the bathroom. And I'm sitting there, and so I catch something out of the corner of my right eye, and I remember turning to look, and in the chair, maybe 2 or 3 chairs down from me, was a 3-foot-long cobra. And it was like coiled at the base, and it was probably about as high as me. So it was wrapped up. It actually must have been more than, probably about 3 feet. That doesn't matter, Jason. It was coiled at the bottom, and then like its head was about the height of me. And it made this super weird movement, almost like this hyper animated movement that I don't think a snake could move in real life. Now, obviously, there was no cobra sitting there, and I knew there's no cobra sitting there. I wasn't like, ugh. I just looked over and saw it, and it was such a weird thing. And at the time, I was just like, I must just be tired. I must just be dreaming. And to be fair, that's the most likely explanation. I was super tired. It was early in the morning. I was bored. I always stay up late. I turn, I look, I see something out of the corner of my eye, and then my brain is trying to construct something really quick for me to actually see, because I'm basically in a dream state. I see a cobra. It moves in a weird way, and I don't react to it. I just kind of look at it for a second. And here's, another weird part. It disappeared. Now, when it didn't disappear like it blinked or it faded or it turned to dust, it simply wasn't there. It didn't just go, beep. It's hard to explain, but it didn't disappear. It simply ceased to be there. Because there's a difference. It was really weird at the time. And I remember I just kind of turned back to watch the trial.
There are other stories. This one is from 2004. In the writing, they referred to people by initials. But that gets confusing to me, so I will replace them with fake names. The reading of this story is in compliance with fair use laws. Before this trip on methylphenidate, I had been using it heavily for around 2 months. On this day, I was visiting my hometown for my birthday. When I got off the airplane, I was in very bad condition. I weighed 30 pounds, less than the last time my parents had seen me, and had a black eye and a broken nose from a fight I had gotten in while under the influence. I ended up getting into a huge fight with my parents, and they kicked me out of the house. So my boyfriend Mike picked me up and took me to a hotel to celebrate my birthday with his cousin Colin and Colin's girlfriend Ashley. Mike had recently made a large substance pickup, and we had a surplus amount on our hands. So as soon as we settled into the hotel, we started consuming. For a while, everything was like a normal trip. We all became hyper creative and started drawing. Colin was drawing weird geometric people, and I was drawing Egyptians. Colin and Ashley left the room to pick up some sodas, while I decided to lay down on the bed. From where I was lying, the ceiling looked like it was made of water. It was warping and flowing and changing colors constantly. It was weird but very pretty. When Colin and Ashley came back into the room, I pointed out this phenomenon to Ashley. Apparently, they could see the water ceiling as well. So we all laid down on the bed to watch the show. Mike wanted nothing to do with this because he knows the warning signs of a freak out, and this is one of the signs. However, I was totally oblivious to this fact. After about 10 minutes, Ashley sat up and noticed that a large vortex was forming out of the corner of the hotel room. From this vortex, which looked like a smoky gray cube imploding on itself, emerged hundreds of shadow figures. They were roughly human in shape and seemed to be composed entirely of shadows. They had no facial features or clothing or any type of distinguishing marks. Being avid researchers of the paranormal, we instantly recognized these creatures to be shadow people. Panic quickly set in as the shadow people began to circle the room. Though for some reason this was linked to a glider story, maybe they are wrong about them being shadow people. Irrelevant, I will just continue with the story. At some point, Mike finally put down his pen and joined the chaos that was rapidly forming in the room. Colin, Ashley, and I were huddled in one of the beds together, hyperventilating and in a general state of panic. Shadow people may not sound too frightening to those who know nothing about them, but as people who understand these creatures, we knew enough to be terrified. Shadow people are malevolent beings. They are horrible, extra-dimensional beings that prey on human energy. Not a good situation to be in when we are spun and paranoid enough as it is. We began talking about what we thought the shadow people were and came to the conclusion they were beings from another dimension that had entered our dimension through the vortex. Substances had allowed our bodies to vibrate at a higher resonance than usual, and this attracted the shadow people. Colin decided that consuming more substances would make the shadow people go away, so Ashley and I sat on the bed while Colin held the pipe for us. In retrospect, I realized this was a horrible idea. All we did was make the experience even more intense. Finally, Mike jumped in and fed Ashley and I another substance to calm us down. Unfortunately, nothing happened. The shadow people continued to assault our senses and terrify us. Mike and Ashley decided that they would attempt to take photos of the shadow people with their cell phones. So they took off on an expedition to the bathroom, which for some reason seemed the best place to take photos to all of us. Colin and I sat on the end of my bed and waited for their return. I noticed that the closer to Colin I got, the more intense the visualizations got. Ashley later stated that she noticed the same thing when near Mike. We later decided that Colin and Mike were conducts for Ashley and my psychic energy, and that they increased our ability to perceive the shadow people. Soon a mass about the size of a human torso began forming underneath the table. It was a large, translucent blob with no discernible form. Colin and I started screaming for Mike and Ashley to come back, and they ran into the room. The blob started speaking to me telepathically, telling me that it was going to spiritually possess me and use my body to hurt my friends. It began climbing up my body. It inserted 3 tentacles into my navel and began to enter my body. Where the tentacles touched me, I felt a sensation similar to ice-cold needles being pushed through my skin. I wanted to get up and run away, but the creature had me completely paralyzed. Ashley started screaming at me to run and for Mike and Colin to do something, but they just stood there dumbfounded. Ashley took matters into her own hands and took a flying leap at the creature and tackled it. Ripping it out of my body, Mike grabbed me under my arms and Colin grabbed my legs and carried me to the other bed. During this, my body was still completely frozen. They dumped me on the bed and tried to get me to respond, but after a few minutes, I was unable to move or speak. I have very vague memories of what happened next. All I recall is Ashley telling me that the creature was gone. After I came back from my state of paralysis, Mike ordered me into the shower. I refused and started crying, telling him that the shadow people were in the shower and that I didn't want to be in the same place as them. Mike grabbed me by the arm and basically dragged me into the bathroom. He undressed me and shoved me into the shower and climbed in after me. I became completely hysterical seeing shadow people all around me. I huddled up in a ball, making myself as small as humanly possible. At this point, I doubt I was coherent. I was babbling while sobbing and shaking and trying to hide in the shower. Mike dragged me to my feet and asked me if I thought the rest of my life was going to be like this. I nodded. Then he told me that if I was like this for the rest of my life, he couldn't be with me anymore. Then I really lost it. I started crying harder and screaming at him. I don't remember what I said. All I remember is Mike spitting in my face and shaking me as hard as he could, yelling at me to calm down. Eventually, he got me calm enough to actually take a shower. The shadow people were mostly gone by this time. He dried me off and dressed me because I was incapable of doing it myself and walked me out to the bedroom. From the looks of things, Colin and Ashley had just had a conversation similar to ours. Colin looked totally drained, as did Mike, and Ashley was lying in the bed sobbing and exhausted. Mike and I climbed into our bed. After a while of laying in bed in a state of total paranormal, we finally drifted off for a few hours of sleep. The shadow people stayed with me for a few months. I saw them constantly, even when I wasn't intoxicated. I personally believe that what we saw that night was real. Mike disagrees and believes that everything we saw was induced by the toxic substances. I am no longer on speaking terms with Colin and Ashley and thus cannot put forth their opinions. I believe that Ashley and I have some sort of psychic powers and that the substances put us in a highly receptive state. To further complicate this matter is the subject of the photos we took. We all saw the shadow people in those photos when we reviewed them at a later time. Today, however, Mike claims that there is nothing in those photos and they all have mysteriously disappeared. I think he is in denial and does not want to face what the four of us went through, and so disposed of the photos. Substances basically ruined my life through a long series of events. In the end, I ended up with induced schizophrenia. I have no idea why people choose to begin doing this. It is absolutely awful. though the stories are interesting and I would love to share more with you in the future. Well, another right now as we were going over encounters with gliders. So about the solar plexus clown ship. I've had contact with the entity back when I was 18 and did a substance for the first time. At the time I thought it was just some weird trip until I read about the creatures. It's crazy, man. Okay, so basically I took the substance around 2 p.m. on a school night. Anyway, I was chilling up until it started to get late. By the way, I was completely doing it all wrong. No trip, buddy. By myself. Not in any way respecting the substance. Not a spiritual setting. Just listening to music in my room and on Twitter. I start to become pretty annoyed at this point because it's like 1 a.m. and I'm a star athlete, and star athletes are supposed to have their 8 hours. I close my eyes, a jet stream of visions bombard my third eye, then nothing, void. A buttery orange backdrop manifests around where my disembodied spirit now stands. In some desert, I think. I pan this new surrounding and I see what I immediately know to be a carnival. And as I'm panning, standing directly in front of me is this clown. Just a clown. Maybe a little spooky looking with his ear-to-ear grin, but just a clown. He only stands in front of me and watches me. Nothing happens and the vision fades. And I'm back in me, and now it's 5 and I call out sick. Didn't know what I saw or if it was anything worth remembering until recently. I don't know what to think of these beings or if I believe they exist. I am not well educated enough on the paranormal to form an opinion, and I'm okay with that. The Kings Island Cabriza is a long-standing urban legend involving an upright humanoid creature residing in Kings Island Theme Park in Mason, Ohio. It's about 8 feet tall and is said to have very little muscle mass and very long arms that drag along with grossly disproportionate legs. It is supposed to look very human, with scales covering its body and its eyes, glowing an eerie blue light at night. Its fingers are also very long. The evidence generally presented for the existence of a humanoid consists mostly of eyewitness accounts or photographic and video evidence. Like most cryptids, some people who claim to have seen it say that its jaw can open 5 times wider than a normal human, although everyone seems to agree on one thing. His head is very reptilian,
and it looks like a snake or even a crocodile. It supposedly roams the park after dark, and you can always tell you have seen it because its eyes glow a ghostly blue at night. It also appears that it hides in the dark and that people can see it all over.
Certain rides and the roller coaster tunnels. It probably wanders before dark through a series of interconnected tunnels that run around the park. The story of Cabriza has been passed down through the generations. There are many theories about the origin of the creature popular in Ohio. In the 1800s, an evil creature from another dimension haunted the neighborhood. This creature was constantly stalking the city and they wanted it gone. It was bloodthirsty, it stole their crops, and it was mischievous. They dug a series of tunnels and trapped the creature below. More than 100 years later, in 1972, Kings Island opened, where the town once was. Now the interdimensional Cabriza roams the dark tunnels all day and ambushes park visitors all night. The story goes that one day scientists captured what ultimately led the cobra's invention, and the being was captured and reproduced. Since then, millions of them have been found all over the United States. However, that seems like a bit of an overestimation to me. If there's truly millions of cobras, surely I would have heard of this before. Like, people say there's only a couple dozen Bigfoots, and I've heard of Bigfoots before, but millions of cobras? It seems like only Mason, Ohio residents have heard of them. I don't know about millions, but maybe they're good at staying hidden. However, the escapee cobriza, the alpha male who lives in the theme park, is always considered the deadliest. Others suggest that the cobriza is an alien that appears to our planets as a bad omen, or a warning that something terrible will happen to a loved one or to you. If you see him in the park, God help you. Though some say the cobriza is the ghost of a deceased park employee, specifically the one who designed the record-breaking Beast Mountain Range, he was fired and now wants revenge. He shows himself to scare children trying to close the park, or maybe the ghost of Tower Johnny, a boy who fell in the park in the 70s and didn't survive. I am retelling stories, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to these individuals or their families. I think it's quite rude that this monster creature is hypothesized to be the spirit of innocent people. Since the images look like an organism, not a spirit, it is not popular, likely it is a ghost or someone. Do not know if I will be able to find these so-called images they claim exist, but editing me will see if I can find them. Though some say Cobriza is a human with advanced powers named Jacob Thompson. He enjoys bullying people and is pure evil. I do not know this man. I am just retelling stories. I do not know if poor Jacob Thompson is actually pure evil. He is so corrupted by power that he is no longer recognizable as human. Though maybe Cobriza is a hallucinatory image that appears when we break reality. Popular belief suggests that if the simulation theory is true, Cobriza will prevent us from seeing glitches. Seems like people are just pulling things out of their ass at this point. No idea where they got this from. It is said to have multiple powers in human speed, invisibility, interdimensional travel, telekinesis, telepathy, genius level intelligence, hallucinokinesis, regenerative healing, possibly immortality, and teleportation. If this is true, that's the most powerful cryptid I have ever heard of. There are multiple sightings of a creature in this area. Henry Lawrence tells a story from 1989. I was in line for the Beast at night. I heard from a friend about the quality of their night rides when I looked over my shoulder to see blue eyes staring at me from afar in the woods. The creature walked forwards to reveal the monster. It had reptilian scales and beady eyes. It almost looked like it was smiling at me and laughing to itself. It growled and bared its teeth at me before running away. Barry Peterson, In 1991 tells I was about to board the New Adventure Express when I heard a disturbing scream in the distance. I looked over my shoulder and swore I saw something but chose to ignore it. While in line, I felt something hit me and heard a strange deep laugh. I realized that something threw a walnut at me. I looked across the bridge where we were in line and saw a green-skinned creature in the woods. It gave me an almost mischievous look and ran away. William Klein in 2019 says I live near Ohio and Kings Island in Mason is only about an hour away. One day I was out all night with my friends on Kings Island, and I think around 9 p.m. me and one of my friends went to the bathroom by ourselves. When we were in a spot in the park that was empty at the time, we must have seen some alien or something. It was terrible. It was on all fours, pale, and had arms as long as me. At least 5 feet, if not longer. And that head, God, I'll never forget that head, that face. It had a white head shaped like some sort of snake or crocodile, and those eyes, if you could even call them eyes, shone an eerie blue in the darkness. The thing stood. Me and my friend froze in fear, and it was about 8 to 10 feet long. It was scary. It let out a screech that was freakier than its face and ran away. We stood there for 2 minutes before running in the opposite direction. As you might expect, none of our friends believed us. I later found out that many other people have seen this creature. In 2022, an anonymous user wrote, "The eyes of the forest shone in the shadows. It screeched and began to speak to me with my voice." It was my voice. It began to mock me when I realized that I was no longer on Kings Island. Now I was in my old home. Oh, the creaking floors made me painfully nostalgic as I realized the creature was taunting me and that I had never said goodbye to my old house and regretted it. Throughout the home, I saw memories of my childhood. I walked through the house until I came face to face with my bedroom door. I opened it only to find myself on the second floor of this nightmare. I came across an aquarium that I used to visit often as a child. I saw my childhood teddy bears torn apart on the floor. Then my eyes rested on the shark tank that I feared as a child. The creature fell through the glass, and the tank began to turn into static, as if it were a television. The creature chased me on all fours until I found my way out. I opened the door as fast as I could. I was back where I started. In my old house, these events repeated until I broke free of the cycle. I reappeared on Kings Island. I noticed that even though I was caught in the cycle for hours at home, not a minute passed. I heard screeching in the distance and never saw it again. The Big Gray Man is the name of a presence said to haunt the summit and passes of Mountain Ben Macdu. It is said to be very thin and over 10 feet tall, with dark skin and hair, long arms and broad shoulders. For the most part, the creature remains invisible within the midst of the mountain, and encounters are limited to crunching of gravel, walking behind climbers, and the general feeling of unease around the mountain. Tangible evidence of its existence is limited to a few photographs of unusual footprints, so most rely on the reliability of eyewitness encounters. One witness, J. Norman Colley, says, "I was walking back from the summit in the mist when I thought I heard something other than my own footsteps. Every few steps I heard a crack. then another crack, as if someone was walking behind me, but with steps 3 or 4 times longer than mine. I told myself it was all nonsense. I listened and heard again, but nothing could be seen in the fog. As I walked on, the eerie crunch sounded behind me. I was seized with terror and ran, staggering blindly among the boulders for 4 or 5 miles. Whatever you think, I don't know, but there's something very strange about the top of Ben McDo, and I will not go back there. Colley's story was reported in the local press, starting a debate between skeptics and believers in the community. Other climbers presented their encounters that they were previously afraid to share. One mountaineer, Hugh D. Welsh, reported that he and his brother hiked the summit in 1904, where all day and night they heard crunching of footsteps as if someone was walking through water-saturated gravel. Both felt frequently conscious of something near them, an eerie apparition. In 1945, Peter Densham took part in rescue operations in the mountains during the Second World War. One day, he reported hearing strange sounds, a fog closing in on his place, and increased pressure in his neck. He got out of there before he saw anything tangible. His friend, the mountaineer Richard Freire, wrote that he felt a completely abstract but intensely real presence on the mountain, and a few years later, in 1948, he heard an intense high-pitched stinging note. He shared an additional encounter with a friend who wished to remain anonymous while camping on the mountain. He said he woke up with an inescapable sense of dread and looked out of the tent to see a large figure with dark hair silhouetted against the moon. In 1958, a naturalist and mountaineer, Alexander Tournoin, published an article about his encounter with the gray man in 1943. I spent a 10-day holiday climbing alone in the mountains. One afternoon, I reached the summit of Ben McDo, and a mist rolled over and covered the mountain. The atmosphere became dark and oppressive. Fierce and bitter wind blew between the rocks, and a strange sound echoed through the fog. It seemed like a heavy footstep. Then again and again, a strange figure appeared, retreated, and ran towards me. Without hesitation, I drew my revolver and shot the figure 3 times. When it continued to charge at me, I turned and raced down the path. You may have asked, was there really the big gray man? To be honest, I think it was. No photographs were ever taken of the big gray man. Photographer John A. Rennie found footprints said to be 19 inches long and 14 inches wide. He published them, but later discovered they were a natural phenomenon caused by rain eroding the snow. I can't find these pictures. It appears I can only get them if I buy a book, which I'm not doing for you. Appearing under different names in several Asian countries, Kresu is a nocturnal spirit in Southeast Asian folklore. It manifests as a woman, usually young and beautiful, with her internal organs hanging from her neck below her head. Belief in the existence of Kresu is shared throughout Southeast Asia. Its origins are difficult to determine, but it probably comes from folklore in Thailand. In Thailand, a Kresu is believed to be a cursed person, usually a woman who committed various sins and frauds in a previous life. When she passes, her sin forces her to be reborn and live on wasted, uncooked, or rotten food. More recently, the Thai entertainment industry has portrayed Kresu's origins as a cursed ancient princess. A kidnapped princess cheated on her husband with a soldier. The soldier was beheaded while the princess was burned. It appears Thailand has no tolerance for cheaters. However, before being burnt, she chanted a spell to protect her burning body, but could only save her head and organs. However, the description is only an attempt to give a royal touch or reinvent the mythical being of a well-known story. These origins are essentially folk tales for entertainment and commercial purposes only. Perhaps interestingly, there are sightings of her, which I will get into later. There are other oral traditions that say the spirit used to be a rich woman with a black gauze or ribbon tied around her head and neck to protect her from sunlight. That woman was then possessed by an evil spirit and she was cursed as Kresu. Other popular legends claim that the spirit may have originated from a woman trying to learn black magic, who made a mistake or used a wrong spell, so that her head and body separated. Past sins are also related to passing on Kresu's curse. Women who have aborted or took the life of someone in a previous life become Kresu as punishment. Other tales say that a person is cursed as a Kresu if she has consumed food and drink contaminated with the saliva or flesh of a Kresu. Popular imagination also holds that transformation into Kresu is mostly limited to relatives of women practicing witchcraft, especially their daughters or granddaughters. Often women behaving strangely in the community suspect that they are Kresu at night by other villagers. Her name in Cambodian translates to suffering for all. In Cambodian folklore, she is usually a woman who is half spirit and half mortal. During the day, they look like ordinary people, but at night, they get up, leaving only their heads and organs on the decaying bodies, and they tended to look for food. They were believed to enjoy smelly things, blood, raw meat, village livestock, corpses, excrements, placentas, newborns, and other things weirdos are into. Their weaknesses are thorns and guard dogs, witches who failed at practicing powerful black magic, causing it to crash by cursing themselves. Others believe that they are practitioners of black magic who borrow the power of evil spirits, allowing them to control their bodies at night. The Kresu must transfer her curse to another woman to enter the cycle of reincarnation. It can be their daughter, granddaughter, relatives, or other women who also practiced witchcraft. But some believe that it can simply be transmitted to any woman through the exchange of bodily fluids, usually by deception. To protect pregnant women and their children from being victimized, their relatives put thorn branches around the house as a barrier. This improvised thorn fence prevents Kresu from sucking blood and causing further suffering to pregnant women. After childbirth, the woman's relatives must carry the cut placenta far away for burial to hide it from the Kresu. If the placenta is buried deep enough, the spirit will not find it. It is believed that it would bring great misfortune to the child and his family if it ate the placenta of the mother. Kresu is under a curse that makes it hungry at night and always active when it hunts to satisfy its greed. Looking for blood to drink or raw meat to eat, it can attack cattle or chickens in the dark, drinking their blood and eating their intestines. It can also hunt cattle like water buffalo. If blood is not available, Kresu may feed on feces or decaying flesh from animals. Clothes left outside would be found soiled with blood and excrement in the morning, allegedly after she had wiped her mouth. Therefore, villagers would not leave clothes hanging to dry outside during the night hours. Kresu hides the headless corpse from where it came in a quiet place because she has to join it before dawn, living like a normal person during the day despite her sleepy appearance. Crushing Kresu's dormant headless body is deadly to the spirit. The flying head returns after the sunrise, but is reunited with the wrong body, causing it to be tortured. If the upper part of the body does not find the lower part before dawn, it will perish in excruciating pain. Creusot also perishes if its intestines are cut or if its body disappears or someone hides it. Some folk beliefs say the creature can be destroyed by fire. Creusot's main enemies are angry villagers carrying torches. They can catch the Creusot and defeat it, or see where it goes before dawn and dispose of its body. According to legend, wounded people should know about Creusot because it smells blood and eats at night when people are asleep. However, there are ways to prevent it from entering their home. Homeowners usually build thorn fences or grow spiky bamboo to protect themselves from the Creusot. It is afraid of spiky things because her intestines can become caught and she could not escape. On the night of July 22nd, 2008, near midnight, CCTV footage from a lemonade factory in Thailand captured the alleged Creusot quite clearly. It can be seen on the other side of the factory wall closest to the field. Zooming in on the footage, an elderly woman living alone in the area could be seen. Local people claim to see strange lights and strange sounds at night for around a year. However, when the old lady in the picture passed, it is said that the Creusot sightings ended. Photo and video technology experts investigated the CCTV footage and found that it had not been edited. The Creusot shown in the CCTV image was probably caused by the light moving at the top, reflecting the wet and damp area of the land and creating the illusion of the Creusot. Strange red lights hovering over the rice fields were seen in mid-June 2014 and are believed to be from Creusot. Soon after, hundreds of teenagers, even thousands on some nights, reportedly gathered in the area to prove the creature exists. This caused damage to the rice fields. The landlord claims that the Creusot is not there, and the lights they saw are actually floating lanterns to chase away birds. In September 2015, a photo reportedly showing Creusot's internal organs and organs tapered between thorn branches was shared online on social media, said to be taken in a village called Ben. However, the villagers denied this information and explained there is no village called Ban Phi in the area. Local villagers blamed Creusot's actions for the mysterious death of a large number of chickens at a farm on the night of October 4, 2015. In February 2016, villagers found strange lights floating at night, which they thought were Creusot. This news caused panic among many people. On September 13, 2016, around 9:30 p.m., CCTV footage captured strange lights from a house. The owner of the house, who was first to review the footage, said she was watching TV at the time and heard her dog barking loudly. She went outside to check the source of the sound, but she couldn't see anything. So she looked at the CCTV screen. She saw strange lights, which she observed for an hour until the lights hovered over the garden of her house. She freaked out and called her neighbor, her father, and two others, all of whom